Good evening and welcome. I'm Rahul Kamal. You're watching India Today. The Maharajah has finally been put on sale. This is a big India Today exclusive. The privatization plan of Air India being cleared by the Modi government. Details being put out into the public domain for the first time right here on News Today at 9. It's the Modi government's biggest and boldest reform yet. The centre has finally decided to put Air India on the chopping block. This is a big India Today exclusive. Details of the Air India privatization blueprint being put out on the public domain for the first time ever. Official confirmations coming in from the Minister for Civil Aviation from the Niti Aayog. What's been spoken of for many decades now. It was Rajiv Gandhi who first started mulling with the idea of disinvesting Air India. Now, the Modi government at the highest levels telling us the decision has been taken. Remember, for the past 3 years, people have been asking, when will the BJP government led by Prime Minister Modi live up to his maxim of the government has no business to be in business? When will disinvestment and privatization begin? This could be the big one. Maharajah for sale, an India Today exclusive. But before that, here's a quick look at the other headlines tonight at 9.
Narasimha Rao, Manmohan Singh and Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the torchbearers of India's liberalization and champions of free market economy, all had wanted to discipline the Maharajah but failed miserably. Now, in its boldest move yet, the Narendra Modi government has decided to privatize the 52,000 crore debt-laden national carrier Air India, a decision that will raise the hackles of trade unions and left parties who have managed to block disinvestment in the aviation sector for over 25 years. As a first step, the Finance Minister has shared a report from Niti Aayog on Air India with the Aviation Ministry.
तो एयर इंडिया चलाने के लिए आपने 50,000 करोड़ लगाया हुआ है। वो पैसा सरकार का मतलब आपका पैसा है। वो स्कूल एजुकेशन के लिए खर्च हो सकता था। और दुनिया भर में और इस देश में अगर 87% और 86% ऑफ द एयर फ्लाइंग कैन बी हैंडल्ड बाय प्राइवेट सेक्टर, अगर 86% प्राइवेट सेक्टर हैंडल कर सकता है तो 100% भी कर सकता है जी।
And this time, the government is determined the plan to privatize Air India doesn't remain just on paper. For the first time, the Civil Aviation Ministry has given its stamp of approval. Talking to India Today, the Junior Minister of Civil Aviation, Jayant Sinha, confirms that the process has already been started.
What we are working on now is really the process. That, of course, is something the cabinet will decide. So we are working to be able to figure out exactly what the process is going to be and how it's all going to unfold at this point.
And there is no looking back. For an airline with bureaucratic baggage, the government has opted for the privatization surgical strike. A look at the Air India report card shows how it has not made profits in the past decade. It continues to bleed and posted 3,643 crore losses in the last fiscal. Despite trimming corners and low crude oil prices, its revival seems unlikely.
We are very much at the end of the process, Davina. We've obviously been working on making sure that Air India is as strong and as viable as possible for 3 years now. And you must remember that we've spent the first 2 years really turning around the airline so that it is stabilized, so that it's not losing as much money. So we've stabilized the airline. It's doing quite well now. And now the question really becomes, what do we do to make it truly a great global airline? What are all the steps we need to take to do that, including obviously as far as ownership is concerned.
But privatization of Air India is easier said than done. Back in Vajpayee's regime, his disinvestment minister Arun Shourie had led the proposal to sell Air India's stake to private players, only to be stuck in the political quagmire. So will the Modi government learn from the past to give Air India private wings this time?
The transformation that's underway, I think, is truly transformative and historic. So I think you'll find that in this case as well.
Another big challenge will be to keep fares under control. The government has recently launched the Udan scheme to connect the Aam Aadmi with Hawai Chappals to Hawai Jahaz. But corporate interests can push the fares and make the government target of the Sood-Boot debate once again.
कई सारी हमारी एयरलाइंस और जितने सारे हमारे एयरलाइन हैं उतना कंपटीशन रहेगा, जितना कंपटीशन रहेगा उतना हमारे भाड़े जो हैं वो कम रहेंगे.
Many have called the state funding of Air India a bigger problem than the Kingfisher. Now that the Modi government has decided to pull the plug, the next 12 months will see the Maharajah makeover. It's an idea whose time has come and gone, but better late than never. Bureau Report, India Today.
That's the big breaking story tonight. I want to put this in context for our viewers. Remember, this is a much delayed idea. And if you look at the spiraling losses of Air India, and we're looking at the past 7 years now, the loss being suffered by Air India has been consistent. It was 7,560 in 2011-2012, 5,490 in 2012-2013, 6,280 in 2013-2014. Since the Modi government came in the first year, the loss went up to 5,860. Since then, it's been coming down, but it is still at 3,643 crore rupees. Now, essentially, over the last 2 quarters, Air India for the first time has been able to register an operational profit. But the huge loss that needs to be dealt with comes out when I show you our next graphic, which deals with the mounting debt of Air India. The total debt of Air India is a whopping 52,000 crore rupees. That's the total debt. Loans taken for purchase of aircrafts by Air India total about 20,000 crore rupees. That's the major critical component. The total working capital loan taken by Air India is 30,000 crore rupees. After this, you've got the debt service loan which Air India has to pay. The debt service loan is 6,500 crores. So here is the total debt of 52,000 crores. The loan for aircraft, 20,000 crores. Working capital loan at 30,000 crore. Debt service loan at 6,500 crore. Government's equity infusion at 2,500 crore. Depreciation at 1,500 crore. Air India needs to borrow every year 2,500 crore rupees to be able to survive. I want to now bring you some excerpts of what Jayant Sinha, Minister of State for Civil Aviation, told our business correspondent Devina Gupta. She got this exclusive interview with Jayant Sinha, where for the first time the Modi government has come on record to accept that Air India will be privatized, that the decision-making process is in its final stage. 2 senior functionaries of the Modi government. Jayant Sinha first, and after that I'll get you Amitabh Kant, the Chief Executive Officer, highly powerful executive who runs the Niti Aayog. I'll get you his interview as well. Both of them coming on record to accept that the blueprint has been prepared. On India Today at this time, we're getting you the blueprint. Sit back first and listen to Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Jayant Sinha.
But has the process, Minister, started? For example, the assets need to be assessed, which Air India has. That's what even the Honorable Finance Minister has said, that there are a lot of immovable assets, physical properties, both here in India and abroad. Has the assessment started of these properties?
We are very much at the end of the process, Devina. We've obviously been working on making sure that Air India is as strong and as viable as possible for 3 years now. And you must remember that we've spent the first 2 years really turning around the airline so that it is stabilized, so that it's not losing as much money. And for the first time in 10 years, in 2015-16, the airline actually made an operating profit.
Yes.
Obviously, we were helped because of lower oil prices, but we also did a lot of work to improve the operational performance of Air India. There's a long way to go, but the turnaround has happened. So we've stabilized the airline. It's doing quite well now. And now the question really becomes, what do we do to make it truly a great global airline? What are all the steps we need to take to do that, including obviously as far as ownership is concerned?
So Air India, in a sense, will remain Indian as well once privatization kicks off, because there is also speculation that foreign players might be allowed to bid for stake.
We want Air India to be a great global airline.
So, but will it be an Indian airline?
We want it to be a great global airline. Of course, we have to work through the process, and Cabinet is working on it.
But number of staff has been reduced, number of employee per aircraft has been reduced from say 2010 to 2015. The numbers are somewhere 26,000 to now about 13,000. 2010 you had number of employees per aircraft as 436. Now 2015-16 it's 120. An expansion which has been cleared by the Air India board as well to induct more aircraft. Will that be put on hold?
Not at all. I mean, the idea with Air India is for it to continue to flourish, to continue to get stronger, more competitive, and that's really what Air India is doing. And all the steps they're taking are steps that are profitable, that are steps that make commercial sense, and that anybody who owns the airline would want to take.
Also, the number of pilots have been reduced from 1,543 in 2011-12 to about 1,411 in 2015-16. Now, here is a concern. If the move of privatization goes ahead, will there be impact on the jobs in Air India?
Not at all. As far as aviation is concerned, we have tremendous growth prospects.
But whom do you blame for the mess? Because if you go back to 2006, when the merger had happened, you already now have the CBI which has launched an inquiry about how the merger itself has to be questioned, whether there were also diversion from profitable route at that time. And there is an ongoing inquiry on that. And perhaps that time damage could have been saved and we wouldn't be at this situation.
You know, industry experts believe that a series of decisions were made that have significantly impaired the company's competitive position. I don't spend much time looking backwards and looking at the rear view mirror. My focus is really, you know, what we need to do to strengthen and make Air India the best possible airline it can be. Of course, investigative agencies, industry experts, analysts are looking at what happened in the past. That's for them to do. My job is to really serve India, serve the people of India, and take what is a very important national asset for us, Air India, and to make it, as I said earlier, you know, a great global airline.
Just how much time are we looking at, sir?
I think the government's position on that is very clear, and we want to move as quickly as possible.
So within the next 3 years, that proposal will see dawn of the day?
We are moving as quickly as we can.
So this is this week's edition of India Today magazine. The end. Mounting losses and a crushing debt of 52,000 crore rupees forced the government to push for the privatization of Air India. Two senior government functionaries now coming on record to confirm this India Today exclusive. Joining us on this broadcast, the editor who put that story together, Raj Chingappa, editorial director of India Today magazine and the author of this exclusive story, joining us on this broadcast. Also, Jitendra Bhargav, he's been the former executive director of Air India, the face of the airline for many years, understands the ins and outs of what's right and wrong with Air India. Narendra Taneja is with the economic cell of the BJP, spokesperson of the BJP. With us also is left-leaning economist Prasenjit Bose, and KVJ Rao is the general secretary of the Cabin Crew Association of Air India. Predictably, the various associations of Air India employee unions very unhappy with what the government intends to do. So far, they've been able to stall previous governments. Let's see how the unions react. But before that, I want to go across to Devina Gupta, who's been working on putting the story together for the past 72 hours. Devina, if you compare Air India with a relatively new airline like Indigo, for the longest time, Indigo was actually a much smaller airline. Now, not just in terms of market share, but also in terms of the number of aircraft they have, the efficiency with which they operate. A newcomer like Indigo shows that it can run miles ahead of Air India.
Absolutely, Rahul, because the numbers are speaking for themselves. When we look at Indigo, let's play out those graphics as well here if possible, that how it's been able to rule the market. You're looking at about 39.9% stake for Indigo, while Air India just enjoys about 14.3% share in the entire market. Jet also scoring just right below Indigo, but the reason Indigo has been a market leader is because they work on a single aircraft lease policy. That is, they only have Airbus with them, while Air India and even Jet have Airbus and Boeing, both aircraft, which leads to more cost. They've also been able to operationalize their routes, introduce technology to ensure cost is cut. They have done optimal human resource management as well and have been able to lead the chart where Air India has failed. And it's ironic, Rahul, because Air India started as a dream for JRD Tata as a private airline, which was nationalized later in 1950s and got its story wrong post-merger in 2006 as well. And if you look at this last figure that I want to show you, in terms of revenue comparison, it is interesting. Indigo just has 19,370, Air India has 22,146 crore. But where it's bleeding is how the bureaucratic management has taken the expenditure to 25,789 crore, vis-a-vis about 17,700 crore for Indigo. That means Air India is at a loss for about 3,600 crore rupees, and that's where trimming needs to be done, which the government hopes a private player could do and turn it profitable like Indigo with about 1,659 crore profit for the last fiscal.
Very much, Devina. Raj Chingappa, this is a cracker of a story being confirmed by two senior government functionaries we've heard so far just from Jayant Sinha. In a moment from now, I'll get you an exclusive conversation with Amitabh Kant as well. But this is an idea that's been thought of in the past. This is an idea which governments have had the intent of executing but have failed to do so. What's the guarantee that where Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh came a cropper, the Modi government will be able to see through the sale of the Maharajah?
Rahul, for one thing, the size of the debt, 52,000 crores, is enormous. You've never had this kind of debt for any airline, possibly even for a PSU, a public sector unit. The other is there is a constellation of factors. Even as Air India nosedives, the Indian aviation sector, the domestic sector, is booming. It's growing at 21%. So you've got low prices of airline fuel. You've got a booming aviation sector and lots of other players, and Davina was talking about Indigo, doing outstandingly well. If you have to sell Air India, this is the time you'll get the best price. So, of course, one is not saying sell it all in one piece, because you have got a 30,000 crore debt. Very few private investors will come in and want to buy, an airline which is so heavily weighed in. So what I think we are going to see in the next couple of months, as Jayant Sinha was mentioning, is a process. And that's because Air India has a whole lot of subsidiaries and properties that, if it first sells, can certainly reduce the debt and therefore make it a more attractive proposition to sell. So I think it's a process. It's an idea that whose time has finally come. I think the Modi, Prime Minister Modi government is willing to bite that bullet. And it is being enabled, as I was mentioning, by a constellation of factors that could make this decision far more, timely than as before. But of course, there will be cautions. They're certainly worried about the fact that they shouldn't be accused of selling precious silver cheaply. So I think the reason, while they've taken the decision in principle, which was what we have reported in the magazine, they will have to then work the ways out to ensure that they don't run into questions by the CAG.
One of the big problems, Narendra Taneja, is this figure of 52,000 crore rupees of debt. 52,000 crore rupees of debt is a landmine for any potential strategic investor to come in. They'll all run like many nautical miles away. They'll run many air miles away. They won't want to come close. So is there also a plan of the government finding a way of ensuring that whoever this potential investor may be doesn't get saddled with this huge burden of a debt of 52,000 crore rupees?
Well, first of all, there is no final decision yet. The matter is yet to go to the cabinet, and the cabinet alone will take the final decision. But having said that, no, investors won't run away. Two reasons for that. Number one, Air India today is in much better health than, for instance, what we got in 2014. Today is a much smarter company. It is now operating routes where they're making profit. For instance, Delhi, Melbourne, Delhi, Sydney. We have also, Air India has also started routes such as, Spain, Italy, a number of other such routes. Now they're going to introduce soon to Copenhagen. So the point I'm trying to make is, it's a much smarter organization than before. Yes, debt issues there. Yes, the legacy issues are there. But at the same time, let's not forget one thing. Today, India is one of the fastest growing civil aviation markets in the world.
a gravity center, the global economic gravity center has also moved to Indo-Pacific, where India is playing a big role. So we with India's economy growing, the profile of India growing, the stature of India growing, the size of Indian economy expanding, India is the place where every major investor, those who
Boss,
invest
I
in
hope
aviation,
that left unions will see reason and will not, sound like a tape that's stuck in the past. Everything that could be done to try and revive the Maharajah has been tried. All of those attempts have failed miserably. I hope the left will welcome the sale of Air India and say this is a burden the government of India can do without. Every year we have to spend 2,500 crore rupees to keep this airline afloat at a time when the aviation sector in India is growing faster than anyone else. This is a crying need for disinvestment, Prasenjit.
No, I would beg to disagree with you because there are two things. First of all, the huge amount of debt, 52,000 crore debt that you are talking about, has not come in this phase. This is a result which you have discussed. This is a result of completely erroneous decisions that were taken in the past during the time of the erstwhile government, where they went for an ill-conceived merger. They ordered for 100 odd fleets where there was no such requirement, and this debt is a legacy of the past. So today, to suddenly look at a snapshot of the Air India balance sheet and say, look, 52,000 crore debt and it is a drain on the exchequer and so on, is actually not being honest with facts. This has happened because of certain decisions which you are correctly mentioning. The CAG has pointed out, and now there is a CBI inquiry into it. But second point is that
Sanjay, there's only one point. Yes, there are errors of the past. Can those errors be fixed? Can Air India be run successfully? Despite the fact that it's made operational profits over the last 2 quarters, the reality is Air India cannot be run successfully by the government. Jetli said 86% of India's airlines are private airlines. Why can't 100% be private airlines?
No, listen. So that's not the point. That can be an argument for every sector. That can be an argument for the oil sector. That can be an argument for the steel sector. That's not the point. The point is that the kind of economy we have, it is good to have a public sector presence because it ensures fair competition. 100% private sector would actually lead to cartelization. The presence of a public sector, even if it is 14%, tomorrow if the Air India is run in a better manner, then obviously there is a possibility of that share going up. It is still not the lowest
Jitendra Bhargav, are those fair fears that there could be cartelization, that when, for example, somebody else said this in the morning when I was chatting with him, if there's a evacuation from Syria or Lebanon, the private carriers may or may not be willing, and therefore India needs a government-owned carrier. Those are past arguments. We've heard them. As a former insider of Air India, do you believe those arguments have some merit, or is it just time to put the Maharajah on the chopping block, and the sooner we get done with it, the better?
Rahul, one thing is very clear, that Air India in its current avatar can really not thrive. That's a given. But why is it so needs to be looked into. A, government propensity to interfere in day-to-day operations. They appoint the board of directors who do not strategize or give a strategic direction to the airline. The chairman who does not take tough decisions what are needed for company survival. Now, we cannot really detach the past legacies, etc. Who got this debt? Since the whole theory is being based on the huge debt that Air India has, the question is, how did the debt get created? CBI inquiry, as earlier speakers have very rightly said, they are responsible for it. Now let's look at Air India and its functional. Once it gets privatized, what will happen? Government will lose what it's currently doing with Air India. That entity will not have to follow anything that the government norms are or prescribe. Vigilance, Hindi department, parliamentary cell, all those employees that Air India currently employs.
No, that's not the only problem. All these MLAs, all these netas who get free upgrades, all these netas who traveled on Air India for free, they won't like it either. There may be some opposition.
I'm giving you, Rahul, I'm giving you the flavor. This is happening only because it is government owned.
Absolutely.
And the government is a very meek authority in terms of distributing freebies, etc. So what I'm trying to put across is, Air India has to be judged on its operational strength, and on the social kind of factors that Air India has to necessarily follow. The government should ideally be compensating Air India for the social functions it performs. Let Air India perform as per the operational parameters like the private airlines.
Oh, absolutely. KVJ Rao, you know, I have this data point here which says, one second, I'm coming back to you. I want to introduce everyone and give everyone a fair chance. Jitendra Bhargava, I know you worked so many decades there, you have a lot to say. In 2017, the average age of an Air India employee was 48 years. You know, when I travel on Indigo or SpiceJet or any other private airline, the air hostesses, the pilot, the crew, the staff, everyone's so young. It's a young industry. The on-time performance of the team is 78% in 2015-2016 versus a industry average of 85%. Clearly, the current lot of employees at Air India have messed up the airlines, and you know it's reliably late, as India Today magazine says. I hope that the associations involved in Air India will back this decision. We've seen in previous instances like BSNL, VSNL, successful disinvestments being carried out by the NDA government. Or will the employees try their hardest to prevent this from taking off? Mr. Rao?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rahul, just give me some time, because there are a lot of statements made by many people, so I need to respond to that. First, as you said, the government did not have business getting into the aviation sector. They got into it, and having got into it, they have brought us down to where we are today. Political interference, we would be very happy. We would be running the way it was run professionally. It is the politicians that have come in that have created problems for us. As you said, this is a bold move by Mr. Modi. I beg to slightly differ here, because if it was a bold move, and as Mr. Jayant Sinha said that Air India has stabilized, now I see a dichotomy in that. If the Air India has stabilized, then why are we thinking of selling it away? So we can take this ahead, like the gentleman from the left party said. There are many other companies that have got huge debts, higher debts than what Air India has. But if I am stabilizing, I find a dichotomy there. If I am stabilizing, then why are you selling me? And second thing is, you also mentioned about the age and the looks of the crew of Indigo. We forget one thing, that the cabin crew is there, looks are secondary. What we need to look at is my capacity to evacuate that aircraft within the given time frame of 90 minutes, which my crew is performing. Like today you had an incident in Srinagar. Didn't my crew perform? My crew was at the best. We had, and to be very honest with you, if you know what the crew is going through, you would have to do another program on that. We are,
okay,
to be very honest with you, Rahul,
of all of the points that you've made, there's one point that I see some argument and merit in, which is that at a time when Air India is finally beginning to turn around the corner, you know, Lohani and the new team at Air India has delivered operational profits for the last 2 quarters. Is this the right time to think about selling Air India? That's a good question. We'll have Amitabh Kant speaking to us exclusively. We'll also show you all the global case studies. Remember, the disinvestment of government-owned airlines has been tried in many countries across the world. In some places, it's been spectacularly successful and been put on sale. This is an India Today magazine exclusive. We're breaking tonight on our broadcast. We want to sit back for a moment and look at global experiences, because, as I said, from Britain to New Zealand and several other countries globally, disinvestment of public sector airlines has been tried. In some cases, the results have been very, very positive, highly successful exercises being carried out. In some cases, the exercise hasn't been as much of a success. Devina Gupta brings you this report.
The story of Air India and the India story run parallel. The airline has been a national carrier since independence. But while a new India took off in the 90s, Air India was left far behind. The Maharajah is still struggling to keep pace with changing times and competition. Privatization could be the bitter but life-saving drug the ailing airline needs. And India won't be the first to do so. In the late 80s, Margaret Thatcher had unleashed the privatization revolution in the UK, and she forced British Airways into a competitive market. a move that was opposed by labour unions and the opposition, which alleged crony capitalism. But the airlines took a giant leap to become the world's most profitable airline in 1990s, earning the tag of world's favourite airline. And its good run continues even post-Brexit, where it posted record operating profit of £1.4 billion in 2016. The Kiwis have done it twice. After privatisation of their national carrier in 1989, Air New Zealand reported a series of losses, forcing the government to step in and take over control in 2001. It later sold 20% of its stake to reduce holding to 53% to raise funds, and has turned profitable. Even the popular German airline Lufthansa was fully privatized in 1997 to tackle bankruptcy and has seen considerable growth, reporting net profit of $1.9 billion in the last fiscal. But privatization of Air India might not be a cakewalk. Neighbouring Sri Lanka is looking at selling off its national carrier to reduce debt and is scouting for buyers. So for the Modi government, Air India's sale will face some global competition, though the size of India's domestic market, which is yet to be fully tapped, works to the centre's advantage. If past lessons are anything to go by, privatization of Air India is a move needed for changing times. Bureau Report, India Today.
One of the key architects of the Niti Aayog report that provides the blueprint which will serve as the basis of the whole conversation within the government about the disinvestment of Air India is Amitabh Kant, Chief Executive Officer of the government's premier think tank, the Niti Aayog. Let's sit back now and listen to what Amitabh Kant has to say about the blueprint for the privatization of Air India, how soon he sees this go through and what the blueprint really entails. Here it is, Amitabh Kant.
When you say that money has to be put into health and education, another proposal from Niti Aayog has been privatization of Air India. Can you tell us the details of what's the blueprint that's been prepared from Niti Aayog?
Our belief philosophy is that government is very good at some things. Government is very good at some things and government is really bad, pathetic at other things. And government must get out of areas where it's really bad and pathetic at and its core strengths must be good policy making, allow private sector to grow and flourish. Resources which are put into areas which are not productive needs to be taken out, and there's no rationale at all for government to put money into an airline which is just taking 14% of the market share, which has 14% of the market share, and private sector has done extremely well.
Right.
And our analysis showed that the resources which are required are immense, are huge, and those resources need to be put into health and education for India to make a quantum jump there. And the private sector has done extremely well in this sector. So this was the fourth report which we had given. Actually, we've given recommendation of over about 60 public sectors. It's just that you find Air India very fashionable. So we did the recommendation on Air India in just about 15 days' time. So it was very clear from its analysis, its statistics, its financial performance that it'll do better actually if you restructure it with a private sector partner.
So for Air India, it's taken you 15 days to come out with the recommendations.
Air India's financial, its balance sheets, its debt, its analysis, you get a very clear picture.
When proposals like privatization of a national carrier, which is reported operating profit for the first time in decades, comes to light, there is a question that is there a necessity to privatize an airline? And also what will happen to the jobs? What will happen to the airfare? Will that also be impacted?
No, operating profit has no meaning. I mean, there are huge debts, there are interest burdens to be paid. I mean, you look at it in totality, there's huge debt. I mean, 55,000 crores of debt. You need more money to be plowed into the airline. Without that, it will not work. I mean, the choice is very clear. Should the government spend money on an airline which has just 14% market share, or should it spend on nutrition and health of its women?
But sir, has contingency plan also been put in place if there are no bidders, if there is no private player willing to take on over the debt of 52,000?
No, we are very positive we should go with a positive. Air India has huge assets. It has huge assets in terms of its bilateral rights, in terms of its brand equity. It has it's a very value-rich company. Don't worry about it. You know, there'll be many buyers, and if there aren't, we'll structure it. The government needs to structure it in the right manner. You'll have many buyers. We should always move ahead with positivity in life.
Amitabh Kant is always one who sounds very confident, but is that confidence based on sound reality or is it misplaced? Raj Chingappa, you listen to Amitabh Kant speak. 15 days he's prepared the report. You think in the next few weeks Air India will be out and sold. It's obviously not that easy. What's your sense of the kind of global interest there will be? Also, there is no confirmation yet, but it seems from what our sources are telling us that the government won't want a global airline to pick up Air India. They won't want that to happen. They'll want ideally an Indian company to get involved. Possible partners like the Tatas have already got 2 airlines. So it's not going to be so easy to find partners and strategic investors, or will it, Raj?
You know, I think Amitabh is right in being optimistic, because as he said, Air India has tremendous amount of assets. It has properties across the country, very valuable. You've seen the one in Nariman Point. You know, it's an iconic building that everybody knows about. Apart from that, it has a whole range of about 20 to 30 properties that are really valuable in all the cities. It's got hangar space, which is absolutely important. You know, it's so valuable. 18 to 20 hangars across the country, which any airline would give its right hand or left hand to take. Apart from that, if you look at the 5 subsidiaries that it has, whether it's the Hotel Corporation of India, whether it's Air India Express, whether it's got the maintenance and unit that it has collaborated with Boeing, each of these are worth several thousands and thousands of crores. So the idea is, if you put it straight away on the block, obviously you're not going to get. No investor in his right mind will take any airline saddled with 30,000 crores debt. 20,000 crores is, of course, loans taken for the aircraft. There are 107 aircraft. Those are secure assets. But it's the 30,000 crores that really is the crunch. And therefore, if they're able to reduce that debt, firstly by selling the property, divesting it away from the actual sale, second by the subsidiaries, again divesting that, you will build at least a corpus of 20 to 25,000 crores that could possibly, finish the 30,000 crores working loan. So that will then make the proposition very viable. Now, the second question is, who should really be buying this? And Rahul, just a minute on that. You had mentioned about the, one of the solutions that is being proposed is that if an Indian entity picks up 51%, a foreign airline with great amount of experience, because Air India's real leverage today, given the fact that it's lost space to Indigo in the domestic sector, is its foreign flights. So if you have a very strong Indian promoter with a foreign airline, then what Jansen was talking in the earlier segment of making Air India a really global airline and India the hub, as Emirates has made Dubai the hub, Singapore Airlines has made Singapore the hub, Air India could fulfill that dream. And therefore, I think we need to look at it positively. The government, by owning it, hasn't been able to do it. A
Prasenjit Bose, Amitabh Kant had a very important point he made.
If the government wants to keep some interest, it could.
He says, are we going to spend government money on education, on women's health, our children, or are we going to splurge the money on Air India? That's a very, very good point. It's about government's priorities and where limited government money gets spent, Prasenjit.
No. This is not a good point at all. In fact, these are precisely points which we have been hearing from people across the political spectrum for a very long time. See, I want to ask 2 questions. Number 1 is that if you want to use this huge level of debt of Air India to make a case for privatization, then you should, to be fair, have a program every evening on every big company in our country, and I can name them for you, who have twice the amount of debt, 1 lakh crore, 1.5 lakh crore levels of debt, including in the UPA government's time we had airport privatization. Which company was the biggest beneficiary of that and who delivered on those contracts? The GMR. Do you know the debt levels of the GMR? So should one now argue that let's renationalize?
No, but that's not the argument. Come on, Prasenjit. This is cuckoo economics. That's not the argument. The argument is it's a private company that's got the debt. Should the government be running airports? Should the government be running airlines? Why should the government be running an airline?
No, why not? Why not? Why shouldn't the government be running an airline? There was why this entire reason ideology. You think that the government should not be doing certain things. I don't believe in it.
No, sure. But the left ideology right now is not much in vogue. One second. The left ideology has been voted out in West Bengal. You're now in Kerala. And obviously it's a decision Narendra Taneja, the government has to take. So essentially it comes down to ideology. The left ideology largely voted out. This is what the Prime Minister promised. It's 3 years late. Will it finally be seen through? Narendra Taneja.
You about Margaret Thatcher. What is happening in Britain? You take a look at it.
Narendra Taneja.
No, you see, Rahul, the simple point is, why should countries, Garib Aadmi, be subsidizing Air India?
Absolutely.
Today, Air India spends 4,500 crores rupees every year just to service the debt. 4,500 crores, imagine. Now the question is, why should the poor taxpayer should be subsidizing? Second point, why should we continue to subscribe this Soviet-style idea? A country must have a government-owned national carrier. Spices Jet national carrier, Indigo is a national carrier, Vistara is a national carrier. Who owns Air India does matter. Is going to carry the same name, is going to do the same service. So what difference does it make? It would continue to be an India's national carrier. As far as this argument is concerned that in event of war or emergency, Air India would come to the rescue. You know, any carrier, government can go and tell any carrier, even government can come to me and say, oh, I need your car, I'll have to surrender my car to the government.
That's a very good point, and that's the point that KVJ Rao must respond to. Look at what happened during the Kashmir floods. At that time, you know, we were in touch with Aditya Ghosh, Vikram Chona of Indigo. They had Air India, they had Indigo flights, even SpiceJet was operating on those sectors under very adverse circumstances, helping pull people out. So to say that this is something only a government company will do and private companies won't, if there is a national emergency, the government can requisition private carriers as well. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Rahul, requisitioning aircrafts is not the issue here. We are always ready because we have the aircrafts with us, we have the crew, and at short time we have gone beyond our call of duty also to do it. We have not bothered about our duty times, or we have not bothered. We have overlooked everything when the need is there. But today, like I am telling you once again, is the employee responsible for the debt? We are not responsible for the debt. The government created this debt on us. They put that burden onto us. Now today they are telling me because there is a burden, we are going to throw you out. We didn't ask. If you look, I'm being very honest with you, Rahul. The employees at the workman level are not responsible for the losses. Decisions are made by the management, whether they are right or wrong. That is for the political class and the bureaucratic class to think about it. But don't blame the employees for everything.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. We're out of time, gentlemen.
No.
I think the one thing that's very clear.
Rahul, one more.
KVJ conducted raids at NDTV founder Prannoy Roy's residence, legal loom by Fali Nariman, and the country's top editors and various press bodies came together to condemn attempts to intimidate the media. The Press Club of India has said that it hoped that all facts of the case will be presented in the public domain and the CBI will not harass media organizations. The Indian Women's Press Corps said instruments of the state should not be used to harass anyone in the media. NDTV has called the CBI raids a case of a political witch hunt.
A few years ago, when my wife and I attended the Commonwealth Law Conference in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, one of the delegates was a retired judge of Malaysia's Court of Appeal, and he told a crowded hall of over 1,000 delegates in the presence of the then Prime Minister, Mr. Mahathir, who, as you know, was not exactly a liberal. He said in a loud voice, "Our written constitution guarantees freedom of speech." Loud applause. Then after a pause, he added, looking towards his Prime Minister, "But it does not guarantee freedom after speech." This is exactly what happened. Freedom after speech is really what freedom of speech is all about. Please, all of you, never forget this.
this is not the time to sit in judgment on each other. I say this from the experience of my personal life. When you have to serve, your service must be absolutely non-judgmental, because the mind suggests so many reasons as to why I did not help him. अरे यार वो cigarette सारी उम्र पीता था, अब उसको कैंसर होना ही है, now let him suffer. No, that's not the time to sit in judgment. You must go to the support and help and assistance and service of your friend, because they will try to divide the press by insinuating such things, and they will use the existing media to defame the rest of the media. So please do not become instruments in that.
Friends, Mr. Puri unfortunately is not in town and hence cannot attend this meeting. I am reading out a statement on his behalf. It reads as follows. I strongly believe that the freedom of the media is inviolable in a democracy, and any move to intimidate directly or indirectly is a cause for alarm and is against our democratic traditions. Such a move also undermines the basic tenets of free speech enshrined in the Constitution of India. I have always maintained that none of us in the media are above the law. The onus is on us to uphold the highest journalistic standards of fairness, balance and integrity, combined with exemplary corporate governance. Thank you.
This is where we're wrapping up our broadcast tonight. A big India Today exclusive, the ISIS blueprint for Kashmir revealed. We've been able to access documents of the think tank of the Islamic State, where for the first time in detail the ISIS plan for Kashmir is spelled.